to Becoming Dr. Baker. My apologies for being a little bit MIA the last couple weeks. I guess this whole PhD thing is really kicking my butt, but I'm so excited to be back and ready and rolling with new content for you all. As you may know, today is the start of Black History Month, and I'm really excited to delve into something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is the experiences of Black men, but specifically the experiences of Black men in the field of clinical psychology and psychology as a whole. I have two older brothers and a father, so the Black male experience has been something that I've always tried to be, pretty attuned to growing up, just realizing, that their experiences, much like the experiences of Black women and other cultural or socio-cultural groups, are different, and that they should be, looked at and looked at their strengths and their struggles, their triumphs and tribulations. And I'm so excited that I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with 3 clinical psychology trainee students about their experiences in academia, about their visions and hopes for the field, about challenges that they've had, about the triumphs that they've had. And this episode is going to be a lot of fun. Trust me, what they're saying is gold, and I'm just really excited I get to share this with the world. Before you start watching, if you are a Black student or a man of color who's looking to enter the field, I think that these interviews and this, this discussion that we had really gives great insight into what the experience may be like, both the good things and the bad things. And if you're not, a man of color, there's a lot to learn from this. I know that I had to kind of just take a back seat, kind of facilitate the conversation, not chiming in with my own thoughts, and really just listening. Great counseling skill. But no, just listening to what they had to say, and I learned so much, and I hope that you all do too. So without further ado, here's the episode. I hope you enjoy it, and as always, like and subscribe. Thanks, guys. This is Becoming Dr. Baker, of course. I'm Brianna Baker, and I'm here with 3 students in clinical psychology who are Black males, and we're going to just talk about experiences and what's going on in your lives, how you're feeling about the field, what your experiences have been thus far, and what you hope for them to be afterwards. So if we could just start with Evan.
Good.
Yeah.
General introduction. My name is Evan August. I'm a clinical psychology doctoral candidate in my 5th year. So currently on the internship interview market, stressful, but we're getting through it. I'm also the student circle chair for the Association of Black Psychologists and the co-chair for the Salbona Healing Circle Initiative, also out of the Association of Black Psychologists. So a little intro there.
Cool. Aaron?
Cool. What's going on, y'all? My name's Aaron Neal. I am a third, I don't really know. I transferred graduate student at University of Michigan's clinical psychology program, or they call it clinical science. If you've got questions about that, we could talk about the difference. And I transferred from University of North Carolina, and we can also talk about that if you want to. What else are you supposed to say? I don't know, I'm messing this up. But I'm originally from Wilmington, North Carolina. I am currently in the cold of Michigan and missing the 70-degree weather in North Carolina by the beach. That's me.
I guess I'm last. No, not because Lee and Lance is wrong. I just meant I'm the only one left. So I'm go. My name is Tadi Kandala. I'm in my 1st year of the clinical psychology program at Teachers College at Columbia University. Before this and going through this now, I'm a global mental health researcher, and I'm originally from Prince George's County, Maryland.
Cool.
Okay, PG County. I love that.
Out here, 301.
Yeah, I didn't know you were from there. I didn't know you were from Wilmington, Aaron. That's like, I'm learning so much just in these introductions when I've been talking to y'all for like 30 minutes now. But...
Also, my bad. I forgot. I'm from Long Island, New York, at Fordham University in New York. So that's where I'm stationed right now.
Okay.
Cool.
I don't know how to count the where you from question. Like, I was raised mostly in North Carolina, but I was born in New York, so I don't really put on for New York though like that.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I was born in DC, but people are gonna come for me if I say I'm from DC. So just, yeah. But physically, I was born in the city limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been in the same town for my whole life, so nobody's gonna come for me there. But one day I will leave. So my first question is just how are y'all doing? I know Evan, you're going through internship applications or not applications, but interviews. And Aaron, you're going through a move. Tarek, it's our first semester or ending the first semester and beginning the second. So just how are y'all doing? How are you feeling?
I mean, truth is, I'm tired. Keep it hot. I just it's getting harder to like get up out of bed and do like the regular routine things of grad school, of like work outside of grad school, of like maintaining like social life and all those other things. And yeah, it's crazy. It's like I work with a client and I give them all these like skills that they could potentially use to cope with all the stresses, and then I'll be like, oh, I got to use them too. And I don't really, yeah. Sometimes I want to use them, sometimes I don't. But I guess the point being is like the stress of the pandemic, the stress of the world is getting to me. When you talked about earlier, like I really just want a haircut. I want my barber to like put that cape over me one more time and touch the back of my neck up. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I should mention during filming, this week there was domestic terrorism at the Capitol. So just dealing with those events, I'm not sure when this episode's going to actually air for real, but that's still very fresh on our minds. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yep. And probably going to happen again near inauguration. They're already planning, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing is like,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm gonna just enjoy Twitter on the way down.
Yeah.
It's crumbling. But yeah, go ahead.
No, we're gonna get those drafts off regardless of what's happening.
Yeah.
Meme my way through the apocalypse. Yeah, no, I definitely felt a lot of what you were saying. Some days are definitely harder than others. I would definitely say I had already been thinking about it, but like end of 2020 going into 21 and like looking at going into my second semester, my first year, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely on the market for a therapist because I've never actually been in therapy before, but now like A, probably a good time seeing as I'm about to become one, but B, just the world is also making that seem more helpful than ever. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
And no, so I like hearing the variety of receptions to the current moment. I think like for me, I kind of like wax and wane between being, I don't like the word jaded because I think it means like you're kind of removed from what's going on, but I guess it feels regular, which is the sad thing, right? Is that we're in a moment that has had so many historic, tragic, what seemed like first between like the pandemic, like people forget that we like impeached another president right last year. That was an historic thing that's already swept under the rug. Some of the biggest racial justice protests that the world has seen, point blank, right? So like all these historic things. So when you turn on the TV and the Capitol is being like run over, you're like, all right, it's another day in the pandemic world, like what else, right? But also trying to keep myself from letting this become too comfortable, because that's scary too, right? When the amount of grief and tragedy becomes normalized, right, and that becomes like imprinted on your worldview almost. So I say I'm kind of like fighting between both of those. So I think when Aaron said he's feeling tired, I echo that. I think tired succinctly kind of captures that.
The amount of things that have happened ever, but also in the past 4 years or the past 2 years that like there's just a constant stream of things. So it's like it's hard to remember. Like every now and then something will pop up and remind me. Like I don't remember what it was, but like something reminded me of the fact that like really early into this administration they dropped the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan. I forgot that happened. Like at the moment that happened, I was like, oh my God, why would like? And that's just like that's swept under the rug. It's like so many different things that have happened since then are just like there's always another calamity.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like, I like to sit here and nod because it does. I mean, like you all mentioned, it feels like every day, definitely for the past 6 months, but I mean, like you're saying, for the past 4 years, and this whole administration seems like it could be a headline of the century. So it's like, how do you deal with that stress every single day? Which I guess can lead into the next question of what's kind of keeping you all grounded right now, and how are you trying to practice maintaining positive mental health, or just maintaining your mental health in general?
I think for me, it's been like having to be much more intentional about like reconstructing some sense of structure in my days, because I think I'll say on one end, it's been a blessing because I do think this work, and I'm sure everybody's going to get into this, does privilege me with a sense of like positive purpose in this moment. I'll say, like when you feel so many people. I was on like the OMH hotline in New York, right when the pandemic was like first peaking, and so in that moment where people tend to feel helpless, to have something like I can help a little bit, right? Just that kind of gave me a sense of like, again, like positive purpose, positive coping, to try to help people in my community, help people I know going through stuff like that. But then there's the other side, right? Where when there's so much of it, then you bury yourself in the work, right? And so I had that over the summer where I was like on Zoom from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We'll probably get into some of the conversation around the specific work that we've all engaged in and stuff like that. But I found myself, okay, I can't engage too much in this like quote unquote positive purpose because now I'm burning myself out from a work sense. So your question about how has it been finding like or like staying grounded is like a dynamic process, right? I'll try one thing, find okay, this was helping me for a period. Now it's no longer helping me. Now I need to realign, I need to reshift, to reground myself. So right now in this moment, it's just being more intentional about my personal friendships, right? Like connecting with people, maybe passing on some work, passing on a manuscript, passing on a grant. Whereas before I would have been like, oh, I need that for my CV. This market is so competitive, XYZ. It was like, no, right now I just, all that work and stuff, it's going to be there. Right now it's just about the people close to me. So that's how right now I'm staying grounded, is being more intentional about my personal relationships.
One thing that has like transitioned and I think will like pick up again for me is well, one, I've definitely been saying no to a lot more things. And I feel like that's been a big change during this time. It's just that bandwidth in general is limited, and there's just more work than ever to be done. So just had to make some strategic choices there. But like what you were saying about doing something where others might feel helpless, I feel like that helped me a lot before I started the program, because right before I was working in a mental health program, and like I had been with it before the pandemic started, and then like we were helping to like transition it so we could keep services going virtually like very quickly as soon as things started going down. And I feel like keeping that running and keeping that program running and stuff like gave me like a really good sense of purpose. And then transitioning into the like program and kind of being like a student was like very different, because then it just kind of felt like I was on the sidelines watching everything go by. And even though I'm still like active in some like research projects, a lot of that is research, or like the ones that are more implementation focused, the actual implementation hasn't started yet. So like right now I'm in this weird limbo where I feel like a lot of the things that were helping me aren't there anymore. So like I'm trying to figure out how to like recalibrate as I'm going forward. So a long way of saying, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out.
I mean, I feel like even though you said you don't know, it was a lot of things that I took from that. It's like I took like the whole saying no thing is, I love that reminder of like, can't say yes to everything, because you mess around to be tired or wore out or burnt out or whatever they want to call it these days. Yeah, so I appreciate that. I think the thing that's been keeping me going is resistance. I think that like that doesn't necessarily have to look like. I think back in the day, like I would have been like out in the streets protesting. I was feeling really guilty because I was like, he was like, why aren't you out there nowadays? Or like, why does your resistance look so different nowadays? Why does it look like you writing papers? Why does it look like you reading articles? And it's like, yeah, I think like Tadek was saying, like it's like slower moving work. Like it takes a minute for this stuff to get implemented, or like for our papers to mean anything. And like sometimes they do sit in the house, but like I think it's about how you leverage it and how you use it. And then like even what like Brianna has been doing with like science communication and like making things more open access and saying like, how can we use this information to really like benefit not just people who are in academia, but benefit people outside of it, is super dope and necessary, because like you can do those things. So resistance is not necessarily just like protesting or like the more traditional front lines work. I think some of us got to be there to pay the bail money, and some of us got to be the therapist to help people cope with those things. But you can't spell resistance without first spelling rest. It's somewhere in there with an R and an E and an S and a T. I don't know. Ain't it in there? How you spell resistance?
You got it.
It's in there, right? I ain't make that
up.
Yeah, but like rest to me is really important, and I think that for me, rest looks like a nap. I'm a regular napper, but also looks like kicking it with the homies. It looks like video games. It looks like long showers with the eucalyptus that I got from Trader Joe's. Like, I don't know. It's different from week to week. It looks like playing with like the new kitchen gadget that I bought last week and cooking something new. I don't know. It looks different, but like as long as I'm filling my cup up and I don't feel like I'm like depleting myself or pouring from the reserves, then like I'm Gucci. Like I can keep going. And I'm gonna be tired, but trust and believe in the middle of my resistance, I'm gonna take my rest. I'm gonna take my nap. I'm gonna take care of me. Make sure that I'm not depleting myself because I've done that before. And no more. So
yeah, I appreciate you all sharing and saying that. I think for me it's hard to not deplete myself and to say no, especially if like in the first year, like when you do want all these things on your CV and you want to be the best and you want to show that you're capable of taking on everything on your plate, especially when the white students around you seem to be doing it no problem. And when you have to remember that, there are stressors that we're dealing with that aren't experienced by everyone. And for you all as Black males in the field, that is exacerbated times 10. But I also like how you guys talk about this sense of purpose that you have in the work that you do, whether it be slow moving things like papers and the research or actual clinical services. And I kind of just want to know what inspired you all to become psychologists in the first place.
Before we got into the purpose thing, I wanted to highlight something that you said though that was really helpful for me, because I was thinking about like I wasn't trying to like knock research work, because obviously I'm doing it because I think it's important, but it's the fact that it is important but it can be slow, and I think just like I feel like I always see other people's stuff and I'm like super proud of what they're doing. And I'm like, yo, that's great. I know exactly why you did that, no matter how long it took or whatever. And like reminding ourselves that we're doing all the things that we're doing for a reason is helpful. Yeah. So I'm really happy I had to do this assignment. So for the ethics class that Bree was also in, we had to write this like first thing about like basically why we are who we are and why we have the ethics that we have and stuff like that. But a lot of that went into why I'm in this as well. So I'm like, by background, I'm Ethiopian. My entire family moved here from there. Various statuses, refugee, other forms of visa, whatever. They got here how they got here. But between visiting there and seeing what things were like there, and also how people were living their lives here, and also just, growing up in the disparities that you see in the DC area, I feel like health and public health disparities in general were always coming up for me. But like even within that, the thing that was so tied into all of those things but was always neglected was mental health. So my path went first to public health because I was like, all right, one-on-one is cool, but I want to do things at like a policy at a population level. But as I was doing that and getting further and further, I was realizing that like there was a lot of understanding in how this goes that I was kind of missing. And to like really get that piece, I wanted to, find out what it was like to be in that room one-on-one with people, and also just have like another avenue to approach such a large problem. So when it comes directly to service provision, I wanted to gain those skills when it came to like having that inform my research and like thinking about how things work on a broader level, because I feel like a lot of people get into very important positions to make decisions about things they don't really know about, and I don't ever want to be that. So it's really just to inform the work I was already doing, and to help me go into an avenue to do work that I've never been able to do before. And make white people call me doctor.
Same. I think so I was a biology major in undergrad because I just swore I was going to medical school, but like I think about like all the careers that I've had, and then after I left there, I was like a neuroscience researcher, and then after that, I was in education. I was a teacher for a while, and then I finally like found my way into psychology. But I think about all the things that I wanted to do. All of them were in human services in some capacity. Like I knew I wanted to work with kids. I knew I wanted to work with people. I eventually, like as I was developing, like was learning that like my Black identity was also something that was important to me. I think that sort of came into like a that came into existence like when I was in college. Really, like I don't know. I always talk about like me back in high school as like I don't know. I didn't know who I was as a Black individual, but like that was developing, and then like also this like identity where I wanted to be able to help folks was developing. Um, but as those things were developing, like I was thinking like I'm going into these helping professions because I want to like help other people. I want to help these marginalized populations, and I had this like savior complex. Um, and I think the like most humbling experience like was as I was like on interviews, I was talking about what I wanted to do, and I realized I wasn't talking about saving other people. I was talking about saving myself, and not necessarily saving myself, but like finding the tools and the resources that I wish I had back in the day. Yeah, like I don't know. Did y'all hear some feedback? That was well, cut that part out. My bad. It's like finding the resources and the tools that I wish I had back in the day to really help and support me. And still, even in this very present moment, help and support me. And I think it's wild, like as I was on my own journey in therapist, like my first couple of years of graduate school, like when I was in my master's program and when I started my doctoral program, a lot of the skills that I learned that I'm even using as a therapist now were things that like I was using to help myself. Yeah, so like I could say like I have all these like lofty goals of like I do want to help Black folks. Like I know that like there's marginalization and there's oppression all over, coming from every which way, impacting us, impacting our mental health, impacting our well-being. But also I'm one of those Black people, and I'm of the mind like with the whole like notion of the drop down things in the airplane, like put your own mask on for you, put somebody else's on, and a lot of these tools and resources that I'm getting through my training are helping and benefiting me sometimes, because sometimes they're not the greatest, but other times they're perfect and they're exactly what I need. Yeah, so like learn how to help me so I can better help others.
Mhm. That's a great I like your response a lot. I think what I'm reflecting on most is how many different aspects I think of your experience you felt this particular path fulfilled. And
Mm.
I think often, and I was messing with Tarek earlier about like applying to the programs and whatnot, we're asked to like kind of put our narrative in a particular, like a singular fashion. Like, what is your particular trajectory, like your unique step-by-step path that led you to this thing? And I think what your answer kind of revealed, and what I'm going to also talk about is like, it's not about a specific path or a specific narrative, but like several different motivations and experiences kind of coalescing in
Yeah.
in this, right? And so I'll say, and I also kind of get frustrated sometimes when applying for stuff where we're kind of asked to, as Black people, shape our narrative around the racial traumas that we've been through. And that's not to say it's not relevant, but it's not all of it, right? And so I have those hurts, familial pains and whatnot that I draw from, but also I want to reflect on, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I thought this path captured that kind of filled me with like love and it's fun. So like I've always loved writing growing up. Like when I was in elementary school, I loved like writing stories, writing about characters, writing about people, writing stories that I felt brought about truth. And for me, I was looking for, okay, how can I, engage with all of these ideas and these thoughts and these cultures and these experiences and these sciences that I love, and kind of like actively participate in it, right? Um, I found that through a lot of, we'll probably get into different mentors, a number of mentors that I met like in high school and in college who were engaged in the psychology profession, right? They were engaged in psychiatry in Haiti. They were engaged in psychology in New York and Brooklyn. And so watching how they were able to apply their experiences, use those narratives to craft their own, right? To help people and also to, no, I'll say that, like to craft their own stories to help the communities that they cared about. And so I'll say for me, what draws me to this, what led me to this is being able to engage with I think, and what I found have so much fun with, like a range of like histories and scholarship and ideas and thinkers that people usually don't lean on when they talk about psychology and mental health. Like when people talk about this, they think about like Freud, they think about Jung, they think about whoever you guys learn in introductory, all those people, right? And for me, it's like learning and taking the value from like Louis Mars, Jean Price Mars, like Fanon is incredible. You haven't read him. Like reading those people, I just get so inspired. I get so excited, right? That's the heart. And so I'll say that that's what I found myself naturally like excited by this field. So I have fun. It's a level of like, I think racial resilience that you feel like you're contributing to more than just the racial trauma that you're coming from.
So it's interesting the people that you brought up though, and things you brought up, because like when we think about the programs we're in, I'm like, how much of that are we getting? And I don't know. I'm making an assumption. You might be getting a hell of a lot of it, but
No, none whatsoever, right? And so that's the, I had a friend one time that said, and he was saying this about college, he said being Black in an institution is like taking a fifth class sometimes, because you have to do the ordinary work and then you have to do the additional work on the side, right? So we're taking all the traditional classes, and on the side, I'm learning about African-centered and Black psychology. I'm reading Joseph White. I'm reading Wade Nobles, Linda James Myers. Like I'm reading all these theories. I'm calling up people. I'm talking to them, right? Because I don't have the privilege of just going to that class and thinking that this is sufficient. Because the more you learn, you realize like this is anything but. If I were to leave just having fulfilled these course requirements, I would not be worth a damn in this thing. So you're exactly right, Tariq.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, I mean, because you had touched on mentorship a little bit, but about the representation or lack of representation in your all's program. And I guess not just even in people who are in your program, but in the literature that you consume and what you are exposed to. If you guys could talk about what that's been like and, yeah, really just how it's been.
I'll take this one first. So you talk about representation. You said in the literature we're reading, in the program that we're in, and what else?
I don't really remember what I said, but just like representation in general, or lack of, which I'm assuming that's what you all are going to talk about for the most part.
How much time we got? Yeah, it's crazy. So I went to an HBCU. I went to North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University for undergrad. So I went from being surrounded by Black folks where like they had a Black psychology class, but it was just extra Black stuff on top of the Black stuff that we had already learned. And it was like foundational as a part of it. I wasn't even a psych major, I was a psych minor, but I was over there eating stuff up. And I was like, yo, this is great. And then like I went to Teachers College where I got my master's, but I got in education and neuroscience. And I didn't see a reference to anything until I like stepped outside of my program. And then I got more contemporary Black folk stuff. Like I was working in ed or in education with like or I'd like take classes with like some of these like people who were doing work in like critical literacy or like science education and hip hop. And like they were teaching like some of these like really cool things. So like I had to be intentional about seeking out like representation in my studies. Which meant that I had to like pay to take some extra classes, which I didn't really like rock with, but at the same time, like it was formative to my like development as like a scholar, as an individual, because I was like, I can't keep existing in these white spaces and being the only person that cares about Black issues in my class. I remember like raising my hand and saying like, yeah, like we might want to consider racism as a stress factor and like people looking at me sideways. And I was like, yo, like race, basic stuff, right? Like, it's a stressor and like that impacts brain development. And we're talking about brain development, right? Yeah. And I don't know. It was just like I had to be intentional about seeking that out. But then as I started like this clinical program, I don't know. I thought it would be like, there's definitely like some strong attempts at it in like the training, but like it still sort of misses the mark. And I think right now in this interesting time period where like people are all like, oh, like we want to know about scholars of like race and racism and all these other things, where we're getting all these like, well, at least I feel like we're getting more like special guest lectures or, oh no, y'all, that's not, it's like people are just popping up and saying like, we want to hear more about these things in this research. But I was like, this research has been being done for decades. Like, it's been going back for a long time. And I don't know, right now the representation like is great. And I hope that these Black people are cashing in on these coins and these checks. But it just feels tokenizing also at the same time. And I was just like, yo, like how can we make this ingrained into the curriculum so that like we don't have to keep stepping outside of our programs to get good representation, or not even representation. It shouldn't even be so much about representation so much as be like, this is like foundational to the program. It's like if racism is ingrained into the fabric of American society, it's ingrained into the way that we have developed mental health practices, it's ingrained into the DSM, why wouldn't we be talking about racism in each and every one of our classes? Why wouldn't we be talking about the Black experience outside of racism in each and every one of our classes? Because Black identity is not inextricably bound to racism. There's so many things that we should be talking about, and it shouldn't be limited to the research that's being done by not just the Black and brown, but anybody who's decided to take up the very heavy burden of studying race and racism. Also, last plug, just because I do that doesn't mean that I want to do your DEI work. So,
Well said.
that's that on that. Yeah, I'm passing the mic. Who want it?
I can hop on real quick. And no, that was beautiful. That was it exactly. I think there's an idea that psychology, it exists for a lot of fields, right? That the vast majority of like core theory about like the human experience, how humans think, spirituality, all these different things have been kind of understood and defined well by those core, often European, when we talk about Western traditions, Western thinkers, European thinkers. And then we just have to add on that like that person about race, because we have the core theory. We understand humans, we understand human thinking, we understand human psychology, but like Black people a little bit different. So we're just gonna bring in whoever it is in the moment. We're gonna bring in this Black psychologist to make everything make more sense. And what I love about, I think like Black psychology as a field, Black studies as a field, is just like kind of flipping that notion, is that like, no, like Black studies, this is fundamentally understanding the human experience, because you don't understand the theories that you're teaching, right? Like when you talk about Freud, when you talk about Jung, you can talk about any of these psychotherapeutic, and you look at them for what they are at the base of them, these things were racist to the core. And that's not like an addendum where you could just take the theory and say like, we just won't teach about the racism part, but everything else is like, no, like that's a core part of the theory. Like it was racialized, it was racist. They understood humans as fundamentally different. And so when you're applying this theory, you can't just ignore that. You're doing everybody a disservice, right? And so to the point, it's not about like having that one additional class, that one additional course, or that one individual person to explain a Black experience. It's necessary for people to understand how Blackness informs like the human experience, because that's a process, a cognitive thing that people have to process and go through. And so what I imagine, what I hope is that these things would be ingrained in every single coursework. You can't talk about schizophrenia, for instance. That's one of those things people think about, oh, this is like just a genetic disorder, without, you can't talk about how that's applied, how that's diagnosed, like the reception people get. Especially, again, me, Tariq, Brianna, we're in New York, like especially in New York, you see these forensic hospitals who get sent there without talking about race, like Blackness, right? And so to the point, like right now, these things are absent from curriculums. We have to do the additional work to find it, and it's detrimental. It's absent to the point where it's detrimental, and people are actively doing, I think, a lot of harm by not learning this stuff. And I will say is, I think Tariq actually shared on Twitter, like the representation, there's such a dearth, right? What was it, like 0.9? Was it 0.9?
Yeah, it's like 0.87% of psychologists in America are Black men.
Right. And so when you do that, it's not just about like tokenism, like we just want more Black men. Like, no, you're like robbing the field of a particular perspective, right, that people can bring. And it's only doing harm, to the point where I'm gonna stop after this, but we were talking about like, I would like to go like get a mental health counselor. It's hard to get a Black male mental health counselor. If I wanted to get somebody who I felt could understand and just my experience, I think we talk so much about Black people having what is the word I'm looking for? being skeptical, having a stigma against therapy without the conversation that like, no, mental health for the longest time has had a stigma against Black people. And we have to address that first before going the other way around. That's a whole range of stuff that I ran around in circles. I hope that the answer to your question was somewhere in there.
And something that came to my mind when you're talking about that is how hard it can be to navigate people trying to do better too. So like when you brought up the DEI or bringing in writers or like this kind of research, so like there's just a simple thing of like who the labor falls on and what happens if you try and do said labor, because people are often, even if they say they want to hear it, often are ready or don't want to hear it. But there's also even just the way that these things get operationalized sometimes. So like I'm thinking personally, like my thing for the most part is global mental health. And first it started with like, okay, we're just going to take and retrofit everything that we did here from all these theories that you were talking about and drop it somewhere else. That in and of itself has all these problems. But then there are people pushing back against that, and rightfully so in many ways, and saying like, you were essentially just doing colonialism all over again, but with like psychiatric drugs. And I'm like, fair. But then there's a weird thing that you see happening where people who are calling out like neocolonialism are also like peddling in like racist like tropes and things. Like they're like, yeah, people in these countries do better with like severe mental illness because they're all in close knit families and they're collectivists, so they'll take care of each other and it's fine. And like you can only say that if you've never been there is the way that I would put it, because like, yeah, some of those things are true, but like these countries are changing because of the effects of neocolonialism and colonialism and such. But B, there's just like this very like flattening of like, these are tribal societies and they do all these things. Like there's this very like simplistic image of like what people live like in the rest of the world. And some of that happens also with what people live like here. So there's like this very interesting thing where we're navigating the like overt and historical racism, and like how that blocks us from doing what we want to do. But then you have to deal with people who in a lot of ways are earnestly trying to help, but because of what we live in and what we grow in, are still peddling racist ideas while trying to combat racism. And that's hard. Feels like it's coming from two different directions.
Yep.
I wanted to jump back in real quick. Think about something that Evan said that's always been like, I always feel like personally attacked by this, not like something you said, but the fact that like, it always is a thought that's crossing my mind is like how much we police ourselves because the programs that we exist in don't allow us to tell the truth about what we're saying. So like that point you were bringing up about like, I don't want to get a call. I don't know if that's ever happened to y'all, but it happens to me all the time. It's like, I remember the first time that my advisor got CC'd on, and I was, what, how y'all, I was just like, am I, like, this my dad or something? Like, y'all trying to snitch? And I was like, I get it. Like, in some ways we're employees, but in some ways we're students, and like they were in this weird in-between place where they want to hold us accountable to these things, but also like, damn if that don't keep us from being honest about like what it's really like to go through these programs and what it's like to really experience becoming a clinical psychologist, and you are the only one of you in that space. Yeah, like, it's like every time somebody says something about that, it's like, damn, it's like we all getting these calls, huh? We all in a certain sense, like I guess professionalism, we have to perform to like meet certain standards or whatever, but also damn the professionalism, like I just want to be honest, and I want to tell people like I think that's the thing is like when I'm in therapist mode, like or I'm working with my client, like I'm honest and I find ways to have conversations about harsh truth, but at the same time, like. It's like my client and I, like we build this rapport, we come to this agreement that like, this is for the betterment of like, this is like for work towards whatever your treatment goals are. And it's like, damn, like we can't do that in the program that we exist in and we all training clinicians. It's like, how can I have honest conversation and there be honest dialogue and feedback without the threat of repercussions and you threatening my livelihood? This is not about what you said, this so much is about me and mine and the fact that like, I just frequently feel like I'm tempering my voice and like I don't get the chance to be authentic and honest. And that is another part of the representation that I feel like is missing. It's like, if I don't show up with my whole and complete self in every space that I move in, then I'm doing myself a disservice. And I'm therefore doing this program and all of y'all a disservice. Because really what I want to do is tell y'all about my Black ass experience.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree with you on that. It's like, because even Yeah, even when things come up, even when you push back, the like way you feel that you have to like there are situations where you personally will feel like aggrieved and still feel like you're like tiptoeing around how you talk to people or like what you'll bring up or like choosing your battles or like, all right, is this what I want? Is this the hill I want to die on today? Because I mean, to be completely frank, like I know people who've been pushed out of not clinical psych programs, but like other programs essentially for pushing back on this stuff when people were ostensibly saying, no, we want this, we want to hear your voice, we want people like you here, until you're actually yourself. And then suddenly it's an issue.
Yeah, I would say like, and this will talk a little bit about my personal experiences. What I was saying was like it's half joking, but in part because I I do think that the issues that we're talking about, and I don't think this would be necessarily controversial, but I'm trying to still be precise, are like difficult and deep rooted. And I've had enough conversations to Aaron's point, doing implicit like on the side like DEI work because they're like, Evan, can you talk to us about XYZ? To know that sometimes just naming the disparity and naming the problem creates like a level of it almost like gets away from how deep the problem is. This and I say like this, right? Is that I've seen a number of professors or programs that say that they want to increase the diversity and like tell everybody they want to do that and go out with the explicit intentions. And I've talked to them, I know that they want to do that. And then no Black people applying to that professor, right? And so it's deeper than just like, and nobody's suggesting the opposite, but like it's so much deeper than just like the intent about wanting to recruit. It's like the professors that you've given tenure, the questions that they're asking, the research that they're doing is fundamentally, in a lot of ways, like not relevant to people's experience. Like you're not gonna get a whole bunch of people applying. I'm not gonna say any specific research because that's where I will get a call. like the specific questions that you're asking, your research agenda is not relevant to anybody but a small privileged, section of the US, which is why all of your students look the same, went to the same exact type of school, like the same, right? So it's like I say that to say like I try sometimes, this is me personally, like Evan, like to temper a little bit down how critical I am because I've talked to people who I know want to do better. I know how like deep and insidious the problem is. And so to try to give grace for people to address that. That's more where my thought process is coming from. With this, still with the understanding that this is a deep, dark problem that I think does actively harm the people that we want to serve. So trying to hold both of those almost.
And that's one of the things I think that makes it so hard is like if you were aware and you were like actively, even like if you feel like you know a lot about racism or any of these issues and you like keep trying to learn, like you are constantly finding out just how deep it is and how wide it, like it's in everything. Like I don't think there's a thing you could bring up that racism hasn't touched in this country or in this world. But like if you're just starting out in that and like kind of being conscious of that, like it starts as these like singular events or singular interpersonal things or these singular structures or whatever, like they seem like a couple of isolated examples, and it's so hard to get to the point where it's I don't know, it probably sounds paranoid if you aren't aware, but like it seems like it's in everything because it is. And I feel like if you aren't aware of that, I think it can be really hard to have some of the conversations that we want to have, and even with all of the best intent.
I was being reflective of what Tadek and Evan just said. I agree with that. Like, it's like I think the way both of y'all put it is like a domino effect, and like you want to make sure that like if I'm understanding you all correctly, the ways that we engage with folks, we want to make sure that like they have like problems that they understand and that they're like it's like within their scope that they can deal with. But also like I was hearing you, Evan, about like the professors like that. It's like, yeah, like I want to do the X, Y, and Z things, but like they have this like small subset of research. And it's like, it's crazy. Like we're describing these professors that exist, or we're describing like these scenarios that exist in each one of our siloed institutions, but I feel like they're reproducible across. And I think about like, and like what Tadek was saying about like these domino effects that start out as interpersonal and then get into like some more like, I think you were going like towards like institutional or structural or like bigger. It's like, I think about funding. I think about like Black scholars who are in the field who have to do DEI work on top of doing their regular work. And then like that creates another problem. Then they can't really mentor us. So they can only take but so many students. And then there's always, it's all these issues. And like, we talk about a pipeline, it's like, oh, like, yeah, let's like bring people into the program, but then we don't take care of them through. And I'm trying to figure out ways to like that dialectic that you just described, Evan, of like, I want to hold space for the fact that this is a big problem and it's multiplying and it's like growing all the time and it's always there, but also like what are the targeted specific ways that we can do, or what are targeted specific things that we can do? And I don't know. I feel like that's like my work. That's like getting into like my research realm of like how do we address racism across both the interpersonal and the institutional and the structural levels. But damn if it like is not like the research that I'm doing and also the things that I'm experiencing at the same time. And I'm, like I said earlier, tired. Yeah.
And one thing that I'm thinking about, like as institutions try and do things right now, that I've been like simultaneously happy when I see, but also like, I also see that this could cause problems for other people, is all of the like calls that are going out for professors or for like PhD positions or whatever that are all like very specifically about racism, which is like cool because I want people to study that and I want, you know, scholars that do that to get on tenure track and stuff like that. But it's also like, Black people study a lot of other things that aren't explicitly about, like I talk about racism when it's always relevant, but sometimes I'm more explicit about it than like others in my research, but like I don't study racism. Like that's not like, and like it's not that I'm worried about like my future job prospects because of like who they're recruiting for that or not, but it's just an interesting thing, like even when people try and counteract these problems that we're talking about, like how narrow the scope can be for us to get in and like fit in, I guess.
No, that's exactly it. That's exactly. I remember my second year, I think somebody came up to me and was like, all right, like I like researching like psychopaths and you like racism. I was like, hold on, like relax. Like
They say you like racism?
like, you like racism. And kind of to the point is like there are so many to respond, like there's so many like I don't want to say like psychological constructs and questions that I want to ask, that because I'm interested in a human experience, in order to examine it in particular populations, I have to look at how does racism factor in, because it's in everything, right? But then once you start focusing on that and like delving into those theories to apply to the myriad of like subjects to be applied to, then it's like, oh, you'll be the professor of racism. You'll tell us that racism is stressful and that it makes people sad and that it makes, right? Like, no, it, like we were talking about, you're talking about whatever presentation, whatever personality, it has to be in there. So when you, to the point, like I worry about that too, right? Because there are so many important theories that are being done around specifically exposure to interpersonal racism, structural racism. I'm literally doing my dissertation on that. So I get it. And right, you don't want it to become like this siloed thing where we just hire this professor of racism and everybody keeps studying like anxiety or misophonia or like borderline personality disorder as if that this is our silo, that's your silo. Like no, that these things inform one another. Racism more so than like a lot of these things. So
like I saw a plan at some point at like the Dean Hope Center, which is like the clinic for like the clinical and counseling program. Like it's a very diverse population. Like it's in Morningside Heights, Harlem, like surrounding area. But they had like, there was an explicit line about essentially like disaggregating the data and like analyzing differences across groups. I was like, you have like probably one of the more diverse data sets in psychology, because psychology data in general is, you know, is often in very specific populations, but you're just like treating it at aggregate and like seeing what's happening. And then it's like, oh, maybe we should disaggregate this. Like the fact that just didn't occur, like as the person studying the human condition to like, to be like, maybe the experience for people experiencing humanity is different based off of these things that we know are happening is wild to me.
exact. Oh man, this is we go like a whole rabbit hole down this, but like even like doing like researching racism, right? There's that implicit idea that like racism is a unique construct that is applied to people, as if like anti-blackness isn't like a unique socializing force that people forced to experience compared to native populations and a history of genocide that gets like constantly, rediscussed and put upon them like consecutively throughout history, right? These are distinct social forces, and like to collapse them all together is like, this is racism, these are microaggressions, right? And that's not to say to completely discount that work, because it's important work, but like there's, I think, undue focus, especially in this moment, placed upon this kind of aggregate concept of racism as opposed to the unique socializing harmful oppressive forces that people have to experience, that like frames their experience of humanity,
Yeah. Like
Yeah, and I feel like if we talking about, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, trust me, go. Like,
If we talk about oppressive forces, like let's throw some Crenshaw and some intersectionality in here. And the fact that like it's not just about this, we can get into some sexism, we can get into some homophobia, we can get into all of this stuff and capitalism too while we're at it. Like, and let's talk about how that is impacting all of the work that we're doing. So it's like, if you're not looking at this in an anti-oppressive lens, whenever you're teaching, whenever you're doing research, whenever you're doing practice, I don't care what you're doing, if you're not thinking about how you're perpetuating systemic oppression in your work, then like, I don't know if I really want to like sit next to you most days. And I don't know, I feel like that's the issue. And then we can't even imagine a world like, if we like really jump into intersectionality, like we can't imagine a world where this stuff isn't even just additive, it's like multiplicative. And the fact that a Black woman might be experiencing racism and sexism at a much greater rate than like I could ever experience any type of stressor. So it's like it's really frustrating that we like to like boil all this down, like you were saying, Evan, to like one, it's like, yeah, like right now we're in this moment where everybody's like racial injustice. It's like, no, I want you to be looking at racial injustice and like, yeah, like if we take an equity-minded approach to this, like racism is a pervasive and persistent problem that has been ingrained into American society, but damn it if sexism ain't right there with it, and damn it if capitalism ain't right there with it, and damn it if like all of these different oppressive forces are weighing down on us and like really making it hard for us to get liberated. And for us to like free ourselves of some of this BS that we are going through. Yeah.
That last part, you actually said free us from it, because the other thing is just because you study this does not mean you were invested in this ending. I feel like there are plenty of people who are very happy to collect that data on us dying and hurting early and have no investment in any of that changing.
One of my, I can't remember who told me this. Somebody said, you should be in this business to go out of business. And I've been like keeping that like on my vision board every year. It's like, yeah, like, bro, like I want to get to the point where I could just be like, yeah, I want to study like Black youth doing like TikTok dances and the fact that they come up with like their own cool things. Like that's what I want to do on the side. But I can't do that because, right now, y'all stressing us the hell out of racism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want this much of my like intellectual or non-intellectual just life space being taken up by horrible things. If I can help it, I would much rather not, but I am invested in things being better for myself and my community, so here I am. But given the option for that not to be an issue, I would be happy for that not to be an issue. Unfortunately, that's not universal in people who study these things.
But that's exactly the point, is that like, I think it was I was watching this, I'm a damn nerd, William Cross, one of his lectures, he was talking about how Black babies, Black children discover their aunties, their uncles, their mothers, their fathers before they discover racism. And so if you're actually interested in the humanity of these people, like it's not just about racial trauma. And I feel like a lot, like we're talking about, like a lot of research right now, because it's hip and fashionable maybe, is just looking at Black people as if these are just humans that experience racial trauma. That's the only thing that's different. So we just need to understand depression or racial trauma. Like versus like, no, there's still such a rich experience there beyond an experience of racism. Like that can't be the complete degree to which you engage with Blackness or any identity, to the point that Aaron's making, like the intersectionality of these identities. Like let's talk about like Black trans people. Let's talk about, Black, how do these different populations experience the world? That should be, we should have the space for those conversations, but people hiring professors to study racism. And I'm not going to discount that completely, because there's so many great people doing great theoretical work there. But when that takes up so much space, and there's unfortunately such little space afforded to these questions, right? I think you just have to be critical about it. I think that's the only thing, right? Not to discount anything, but always be kind of critical about how people are allotting the funding and the money and stuff like that.
And even when you are
Yeah.
doing that, doing it as looking at full people in a full context is very different than trying to chop it up into a much more manageable and less messy way of seeing it, because then you're just leaving so much out.
The first thing I say is know the network, get to know the network. Reach out to DM us on Twitter. Well, I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna speak for me. DM me on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way to reach me. My email box is full, so yeah, yeah. But like, reach out to folks and like connect and network and get to know people. I mean, have conversations, not just like conversations about research and work, but have conversations with whole people. Because we are whole people when we're in this work. And yeah, as you have those conversations with those folks, like get to know the experiences that they're going through presently and the experiences of their past, and see how it has informed like the decisions that they've made in order to pursue this career. And then figure out how they have both struggled and how they have triumphed, and take those things as nuggets. They're not necessarily like the end all be all, like this is what will happen to me, but they are like seeds that you can plant and you can harvest, and they might grow into the same thing or they might grow into something different. But like take it with you and really let that grow. So like mentoring and networking is one big part of it. I'll say as you're in the thick of this, the experience I wish I had, I've not experienced the advice or like the thing that I wish I would have known before I got into this type of degree or clinical psychology is learn to juggle. It's like this degree will ask you to do 8 different things at the same time. I don't know if that's anybody else's experience, but like trying to learn how to do clinical work, trying to learn how to do research, trying to learn how to teach, trying to learn how to write a fellowship and a grant, trying to learn how to be professional all the time, which is the one that I frequently am not doing well at, or trying to learn how to like be a human being in the midst of all of that. And I don't think that's just specific to clinical psychology. It is a particular stressor of clinical psychology, just because there's the added, like you're becoming a practitioner and you're becoming a researcher at the same time. But as you're learning how to juggle, also acknowledge the fact that like you're going to juggle certain things really well and you're going to hold those. But there's certain ones that are just going to fall, and you can pick it up and you can dust it off and you can put it back in the rotation, but just know that it's going to fall sometimes. And you know that that one ball that you got in rotation it's not your favorite one. Mine, administrative work. I don't like to respond to my emails. It's the one that I lack on a lot, but like I'm working on it, and I know that I have to maintain like a base level. Like I got to keep juggling, I got to keep trying, but also at the same time, I can't do everything perfectly. I won't get 10s across the board on anything. There are certain things I'm going to do really well, and everything else I just got to do just enough to get by. Doing the best I can with what I got in 2021 and beyond. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would say for any Black men. Oh, also one last thing. Acknowledge the fact that you might have a little bit of privilege in this. And you might also be experiencing a little bit. I think that a Black woman brought that up to me, and it sort of sat with me ever since. It's like Black men get into Ph.D. programs in clinical psych, and sometimes are viewed as like unicorns, or like, oh, there's no Black male. Tadic said the percentage earlier was like 0.08. What is it?
It's like someone should please check my math on this, because they don't tell you straight up. You have to do some cross multiplication, but I think it was 0.87. It's because it's 4% are Black. No, 3% are Black, 21% of 3% are Black males. So it's a little bit under 1%. Yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever the percentage is much lower. So yeah, we do need to increase the number of Black males in the program. But then you get into the program, and I feel like for me, and like I've noticed other Black men sometimes get like put on a pedestal, or like, and like sometimes that means Black women get erased from that. Or don't get seen as much. And I've seen Black women do work, and like Black men be on like the panel, and then like people will turn and look to me, or even like when I'm doing research, and like I've had people turn and like talk to me about something because it's related to like racism or related to my work. And I was like, oh, but sis over here does that work and does it 10 times better than I ever could. So it's just like like also acknowledge the fact that like you benefit a little bit from being the one and only. And how can you redistribute some of that privilege that you got? or how can you dismantle the privilege in the midst of redistributing it and giving it to somebody else that needs that spotlight and that shine? Yeah.
I'll hop in right after because I also want to make sure everybody's here as active on Twitter, I think. So people, I think, have seen, unfortunately, the degree to which I think people get frustrated at the notion of Black men benefiting from male privilege. Like that, unfortunately, is like a very controversial notion among some people. And so I guess I want to highlight is that, like, in my experience, like that is 100, what he's saying is 100% accurate, right? Like as a man, there are certain spaces that as you've been socialized to engage with in ways that is more positively received. It can lead you to being approached about leadership positions more often than not, right? These are things that, as a man, you have the privilege of. And I think like there's the both end of it. And it does not mean that there are also not unique stressors as a Black man that people also experience, right? So like you can hold the privilege while at the same time noting there are also, as being a Black man in these programs, one of the few, there are unique, maybe particular experiences that sometimes also do get erased. So it's the both end. And I'll say, for instance, one of my Black mentors, I haven't had this conversation with anybody else, but talked about the amount of sexual harassment some Black men can experience in these programs. I'll say, like, I've unfortunately had that experience, right? You can be fetishized, you can be hypersexualized. I've been on a training site where somebody tried to set me up with my supervisor after I tell them I was not interested, right? These things like happen, right? Like at conferences and so, like these things happen, right? And so I think that speaks to the importance of mentorship, having people that might be able to share your experience and talk how to negotiate those unique things that you have to walk through, again, as a Black man, like holding that male privilege while also at the same time noting the unique struggles that you might be going through, not trying to balance one or the other or put one on top of, like, no, it's just like holding both of them at the same time. So again, that's the importance of mentorship. And I think for me, and like I'm happy Aaron brought up the juggling, is you don't have to do, and this is hard for, I know a lot of people who come here and like achieve so much and want to do so much, but you don't get into this thing to achieve for a program, right? I didn't come here wanting to be like, I'm gonna be the best Fordham student they've ever seen. Like, no, I didn't do this for Fordham University, right? You do this for the people, right, that you want to serve afterwards. So in terms of like schoolwork, get it done, but it don't have to be the best paper you ever written. Like the presentation, get it done. It don't have to be the best presentation you ever done, right? Like you take the class to get whatever foundational knowledge, quote unquote foundational knowledge you need, and that's literally it. You don't have to impress anybody else. Like I think that can be difficult. I know it's difficult when people are suffering from imposter syndrome and they want to feel like they belong, but God willing, like in 5, 6, 7 years, like it's gonna be Dr. Aaron, Dr. Evan, Dr. Tariq. Like we're all gonna be out there. So you don't have to be worried about that white professor that's been tenured for 5, 6, 7 years, because we're gonna be out here waiting to work with you when you get out. Right. That's part of the thing. So just for like the program, it's a training experience. It's a 5, 6 year trauma to process, but you don't have to do anything over and above for that program. It's for the people that you want to serve. That's the end. That's the goal. That's the purpose.
I mean, I'd say one thing, and I've talked about this when it comes to public health as well as when I talk about psychology, like there are many, many, many paths to this. I feel like a lot of people feel like you got to study the exact right thing in undergrad and then go straight to be like the most successful or whatever. And that's not true. Honestly, it might be better if you don't, for a lot of reasons. I mean, and here's the thing, like the way privilege works is for some people it might be like you need to do it right after for whatever reason, because like let's say you need to get your, like I know people who've gone into graduate school because that was the best way for them to get like health insurance, which is not the reason that you want to be getting into a grad program, but like there are lots of pressures for why you might do it or not do it, or be able to or not be able to when you can. So like, you have to know that for yourself. But just saying, like, as far as just the program and like knowing what you want and what you want to do for yourself, like having that time in between, whether it's working or whether it's another degree or whatever, like can be really beneficial. Like for me, like I wouldn't be doing the research or like probably know that I want to do what I want to do afterwards if I hadn't gone the public health route first. And that's going to be something that's going to go through my time as a clinical psychologist in this program and afterwards. So like they're just keeping in mind that there's lots of different ways to get to this point, and like talking to lots of different people is a good way to figure out what might be the best way for you. So like Aaron said, please feel free to DM me because that's probably the best way to get me as well, instead of emailing me.
Also DM me because they all have more followers. So I don't have anybody in my DMs. DM me first.
Yeah, follow this man.
I mean, if that's the case, put the three of us in a group chat DM and we'll comment for you. Oh, put Brianna in there too, because like she probably got better insights than the three of us might have. But
yeah, that's true.
Not at all. Definitely not on the blackmail experience. How about that?
That's fair.
Fair enough.
But this was really great, you all. Just like thank you so much for being on the channel and for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your experiences and your thoughts. I wasn't gonna ask another question, but now I kind of want to, just so I don't think the audience knows, you know, how accomplished you all are. So I did want to ask, like, what has been your biggest accomplishment since you've been in the field, or even this past year, or something that you're really proud of? Because this is really a great group of researchers, of scholars, of activists. So I just want to kind of end on that high note of something that you all are proud of. For real, this is your time, please.
I'm horrible at this. I always be like, I woke up this morning, which is a good thing. I mean, like that's foundation stuff.
Honestly, these days, like that's one. So I'll say that's number one. I woke up this morning. Every day in the pandemic, that's a blessing. I'll say two, and I'll say also this is why I struggle, because everything that I'm about to say is a part of like a team of like brilliant, incredible people that I was like honored to be a part of. So I want to even say these things like I was the engine, like I was a part of like the Avengers team that threw these things together. But last year, and this is rolled out over the entire year, I was at a law clinic helping with parole evaluations, and there's nothing that's been as deeply satisfying as to engage in this work and see that in some way that whether it be your evaluation or your report that you wrote or your consultation directly got somebody free, right? And that for me, I held like, so engaged in 3 cases, 3 people got parole after being in prison in excess of like 15, 20 years. And for that, I was like, this is, I'm talking about, when I talk about like the work, like I don't give a damn about whatever paper I published. Like I was able to engage in work that got somebody like free out of one of the most damaging, harmful institutions in American history. So like that, I really sat with that, like this is what I want to do for sure. And then the other thing that is a half plug and half I'm actually deeply happy to be a part of this too, is like the Salbona Healing Circles with ABSI, the Association of Black Psychologists. Like when the pandemic hit, a few elders with the Black Family Summit, which is like a union of several Black organizations, asked us to create a unique African-centered healing strategy for the people that were battling the pandemic in New York as it hit. And I was happy to be asked to be a part of it with like, you know, Muia Cambone, she's a genius. Dana Collins, the president of New York ABSI. Tania Lodge, she's at the Minority Behavioral Health Institute, like incredible. And we rolled out the Salbona Healing Circles, like virtual support healing groups. And since then, watching something like you helped with the formation of and watching the rollout and then seeing like people actually benefit from that, like an actual intervention, like that's a feeling that's like so much warmth. So those, I would say those 2 things really stay with me.
Damn, we should have did this reverse. I don't want to go next. Like I'm amazing. I'm moved and proud. You know, comparison is the thief of joy, though. So you know, Tarek, what you got?
All right. So I think so yeah. So 20 years. COVID has killed my sense of time, so I have to think about when things happen. But yeah, so 2019, I started working with an organization that was starting a youth refugee mental health program. So like getting in the door, like there is no program, and being like one of the first staff in as a project manager, and like getting that up and running successfully, like getting started, and like feeling like we had everything going well, I mean, as well as we could. And then COVID happening, and then like getting all these services up, and then being able to transition that in like a week or two to like just keep going completely online with all of the barriers that you can think of given the population that we're working with. I'm super proud of the team. And like managing, we definitely didn't do everything perfect from the start to when COVID hit or anything, but just the fact that we're able to keep things running and it's still going right now is something I'm definitely really proud of. I was happy I got to be a part of that.
Definitely should have gone second now. No, I'm just playing, but no, I'm definitely of the mind that like I'm extremely proud of myself for doing like the regular everyday things. I think that the small things make for the bunch of small things add up to the extraordinary things. So like one of those people that's really grateful for like moments like right now, or moments like with my mentor and my advisor, Enrique Neblet. I think a lot of the work that we're starting to do is the work that like both he feels called to do and I feel called to do, and I feel really purposeful in that. So we're starting like the process of like writing a lot of grants, or like trying to like get some programs and stuff off the ground, working with people in Detroit. So like we're working to do community engaged research. So doing that means like creating a lot of partnerships and like trying to get out into the community and doing things like that. But it's really hard with these virtual or digital settings. It's like how you meeting somebody on Zoom for the first time. Like once you send them a Zoom link and be like, let's connect. But I think the things that I'm really proud of are the fact that like we've been able to do the small things to get there. So like being in these meetings or these big meetings and just like messaging folks, or like trying to like make these small connections so that we can start to do these things that are going to be impactful for people, or like redistribute some of these resources from the universities that we work at and into the communities that we care about to be able to be impactful. So yeah, like we're at the beginnings of that work. And I think that that's really exciting. And that's going to be like some of the small things that's going to build up into the bigger things that I really, really care about. So I'm like looking forward or looking into the future. In a lot of ways, it's like I'm a first year graduate student all over again. And I'm really like, at first I was really stressed about the fact that I like transitioned here to University of Michigan from University of North Carolina. I felt like I was starting over. And then I realized that starting over means you get to start doing some new things. And doing the things that I really care about. So just excited about like where that's going to take me. It's like I guess like the professional accolades and things like that. Those just help me to get money and resources so that I can do the things that I really care about in the community. And yeah, like if you ever want to see those, I'll send you my CV. But yeah, things that I really care about. The little things.